Good evening and welcome to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Recording in the nighttime. That's the first one for me. But do not be fooled by this fancy name because it's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And today's show, I'm not just excited, I'm generally giddy about this one. I'm doing the double GOAT. This is one of the GOAT players and one of the GOAT collectors. We'll bring on our guest in a few minutes, but I just want to talk about the player. Whoops, got some stats up. Lou Gehrig. So yeah, Lou Gehrig. What can you say about him? Born in 1903 in New York, raised by German immigrants, attended Commerce High School, where he played a high school game in Wrigley Field and hit the ball out of the stadium and suddenly became a guy that they had their eyes on. The scouts had their eyes on. So he went to Columbia University for a couple of years. And on the same day that Yankees opened up Yankee Stadium, Lou Gehrig pitched a game for Columbia where he struck out 17 and I believe hit a home run, and the scout decided to sign him from the Yankees. So Gehrig signed after playing 2 years at Columbia with the Yankees as a 19-year-old, played a couple of years in Hartford as a minor leaguer with a little bit of experience in the majors. Came up for good in 26, and you could see from his stats here, 23, 24, 25, 25 he came up for good. And the story is that the regular first baseman, who was an outstanding player named Wally Pipp, was in a bit of a slump, had a headache, and decided that he wanted to sit out that day. And Lou Gehrig became the first baseman. And Lou Gehrig would play every single game for the next 2,129 games. And in 1926, the Yankees, who had been a mid-level team in 25, suddenly became a great team again, made the World Series in 26. Of course, 27 is one of the greatest teams of all time. And Lou Gehrig had one of the greatest seasons of all time, won the MVP. We could talk about his numbers all night, but ultimately what it boils down to is he was one of the greatest players of all time. Won 2 World Series, a bunch of top 5 finishes. He won 2 MVPs, a bunch of top 5 finishes. And 5 World Series. Of course, in 1938, he slowed down a little bit. And in 1939, he got ill. He got what ultimately became known as Lou Gehrig's disease, arterial lateral sclerosis, ALS. And passed away on June 2nd, 1941. Lou Gehrig, of course, is a major player in the baseball card world. And we're going to go with our guest through some of the cards that he has compiled over the years. If you are a vintage collector and you have subscriptions to YouTube, you know my guest very well. He is, of course, Mike Baseball Collector, one of the founders of the Bench Clear Media channel, and also one of the major contributors to Chasing Cardboard. So let's bring him on right now. Here he is, my guest, Mike Moynihan.
Yo, and hello.
Thank you, sir, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. We met for the first time, we met briefly in Chantilly a couple of years ago, but met more substantively at the Strongsville show and set the show up. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. You were on my show, Golden Age of Cardboard, a few weeks ago, and I appreciate that. So a little home and home action going here.
Yep. So I usually ask my guests what their collecting history is, but we talked a little bit about this, and I said, Mike, you've been on your own channel, multiple other channels. I think your collecting history is pretty well known. But what's always been striking to me is that every single one of my guests says, well, I took a break during this period. I took a break during this period. And me too. But you've been consistent throughout your entire life as a collector. And honestly, that's pretty unique and I respect it. So that's something that I would normally ask. But in this case, I'm just kind of bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that most people, you can take a conscious break. And I had periods of my late childhood, early adult life where my purchasing diminished significantly because simply of financial constraints, right? We all budding careers, finishing college, all of those things. But I took my cards to college. I kept them with me. I visited card shops while in college. I didn't buy a ton, but I was always looking. Back then I was just crazy for Daryl Strawberry. So it was every Daryl Strawberry card I could find I wanted. And that was, the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And I remember never stopping caring about my cards and looking at them from time to time. And, was I engrossed in it nearly as much as I am now? Of course not. But then as I got into young married life, still early career, we were just broke, and so it wasn't a question of, the desire was always there. And they were always, it's funny, my daughter's room in our old house was the card room. And God forbid she actually wanted to sleep in her bed, because her closet was completely full of cards, 5,000 count boxes. And I felt like such a horrible dad. Luckily she ended up kind of bunking with her, like her and her brother are far enough apart where it's not weird. And so when she was really little, they stayed, she grew up and wanted her own space, but she loved her big brother and just wanted to be around him. And he was just annoyed with her, as big brothers typically are with younger sisters. But yeah, it was never a lack of desire. And I would argue people that say they took a break, unless you got rid of all of your cards, I would say you were still a collector. Collector doesn't have to mean constant purchaser of cards. Those are two very different things,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, that's a good point. I mean, my cards for years were in my parents' house. In fact, it's funny because a section of my collection was in their like family room, so I had too much to fit in my own room. And then this was probably '90s when I got married, had kids, etc. Um, and then the sad part, which I talked about a little bit on your channel, was the impetus of me getting my cards back into New York City was Hurricane Sandy. And I lost about, I would say, one third to one half of my collection from that. Just completely waterlogged cards and binders filled with cards that had mold on them, and it was pretty awful. But I was able to salvage a pretty good amount because it was above, up in cabinets kind of thing. So yeah, I never did get rid of my cards, and or voluntarily get rid of them. But
I,
there were like at least a decade from like the early '90s to like the 2000s when I didn't even pay attention at all. So I think you're unique. I think you maybe there are other people with similar stories, but like I said, every one of the collectors comes on, they're like, yeah, I collected as a kid, did a little bit in high school, went away to college, threw out my cards, got back into it. So what was the impetus for you getting back into it to the level that you're at now?
um, I would say if there were a few things. For a long time, I was a player collector. So I started with Gerald Strawberry. I moved over to Juan Gonzalez, Pudge Rodriguez, Michael Young. As a kid, though, I always loved Buddy Bell, Jim Sundberg, the old time Rangers. And
Yep.
those were the teams I truly grew up with. And then the Rangers were just terrible, right? But I always had an affinity for the history of the game. I would read anything that had stories from days gone by. I literally read the baseball encyclopedia, which used to be a
Mm.
book that was essentially the book equivalent of baseball reference.
Exactly.
It-
Yeah.
and I would literally just read it and memorize the top 10 guys in home runs of all time. And every time I went to a card show or a show or a shop or wherever, I longingly looked at vintage as the unattainable thing.
Hmm.
And I remember the first vintage card I ever got, the 1960 Topps Carl Yastrzemski rookie. I still have it. It's over there. It's a PSA 3. Uh, I've had that card probably 35 years, and it was just this holy grail of things that I can't believe I own a card that old. And I bought it like in 83, 84, right after he retired. And so it wasn't really that old then, but it felt old
Yeah.
to my young brain. And it was old relative to how old I was. It was twice as old as I was, or 2.5 times as old as I was. So it felt really old. And so the vintage cards always appealed to me. And combined with my love of the history of the game and knowing all the quirky things, like reading the backs of the stickers where it would give some famous feats. Remember the famous feats that were
Hmm.
on, I think, Fleer stickers or something when we were kids? I would read all of those, and I would know that Johnny Vandermeer threw back-to-back no hitters, and I could, that he was the only guy that's ever done that, and that Don Larson threw a perfect game in the '56 World Series, and I knew all that stuff as a young man. And then I would say the baseball documentary with Kim Burns took my interest in old baseball to another level because it visually connected me to all these things I had only read in books before, to
Hmm.
all these stories, these anecdotes of baseball past. And so as I got older, like most of us, I mean, I'm 50 now. I've, for the last decade, I became a Josh Hamilton super collector. I still have probably the best Josh Hamilton collection that exists in the world. That's because nobody else is silly enough to collect Josh Hamilton. But uh, that once he got traded to the Angels, and I'm like, this is going to happen no matter which player I select to super collect. Because I enjoyed super collecting a player. It was fun hunting for
Hmm.
all the different cards, and eBay made it so much easier. When I was a Daryl Strawberry collector, I just bought. I have like 1,000 1990 Upper Deck Daryl Strawberries because I just bought every one I could. I didn't know how to find unique and rare things, and Hamilton changed that because it was certainly Juan Gonzalez really changed that. eBay, and I could find cards that I've had my eBay account since 1998,
Oh, nice.
and would pick up cards, that way, and find things that I couldn't find, regional issues or whatever, stuff I didn't even know about. And Hamilton really taught me, okay, no matter who you pick, they're going to move on. They're going to not maybe not be as. I had a really poor batting
Yeah.
average picking players that ultimately were considered
Sorry.
both baseball and hobby greats. And so I felt kind of like I was pissing my money away, and that bothered me. Not because I collected for money, but I didn't want it to be worth zero. I wanted
Yep.
it to have some terminal value. And so I get my Hamilton cards out every once in a while. And I'm just amazed at what I have. I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe I have all this stuff. And I started really going, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start collecting some certain cards. And I went out, started the 300 Great Baseball Cards by Mike Payne book. And I said, hey, I'm going to buy all these raw, and I'm going to do Steeda now because I thought there's no way I'm ever going to be able to get these 50s cards. And I'm kind of a completionist. So finishing it, or at least having a possibility of finishing it, mattered to my OCD brain. And so started doing that, which just took me down a complete rabbit hole of awesomeness with vintage. And really, obviously, financial matters.
Yeah.
The discretionary income that I have now is way different than it was when I was a newlywed or when my kids were younger and paying for sports and all the things you do. Life
Yep.
just is more important, truthfully. And so the hobby took a back seat for a long time to more pressing needs financially. As that burden started to alleviate, it freed up some money. Always make sure you're paying your bills and don't have credit card debt, and don't, you got to take care of all that stuff first, and then cards come, right? And that was true for me, and it just happened where I could start picking up some additional kind of bigger cards. I own cards now I never thought I would own,
Yeah.
honestly. There's
Yep.
still cards I look at and I go, I'll never own that. But I should look back, say a decade or 15 years and go, look at all the cards you have you never thought you'd own, and you own them now. Well, who's to say what happens? I could win the lottery. It could
Yeah.
happen. And I
Well,
could,
or and we'll get into it a little bit later. You could get a nice surprise call from John Keating.
that's
So,
right. That could happen and lead you down a path, another rabbit hole. But let me get into Lou Gehrig because I think
yeah,
that's obviously what we're talking
I was
about
gonna ask
today.
you, how obviously Gehrig, he's a goat. You wanna go after goats if you're getting vintage, but how did you get to the point where you could do the collection that we're going to see a little bit in a little bit?
So Gehrig was a lifetime Yankee. absolutely abhor the Yankees. I hate them.
Sorry.
I know. Yet I significantly respect their history. Those can coexist. I'm proof of it.
Mhm.
I want the Yankees to lose every game they play from now on. And yet I love their history and I respect their history. And I read a book, which we'll get to later. I know I had a scan of it that I sent to you called The
Yep.
Luckiest Man.
Mhm.
And it really gave me a significant insight into Gehrig's life and who he was as a person and his character beyond the stats, which are absolutely mind-boggling if you really look at them. He's the greatest first baseman of all time, and he
Yep.
only really played 14 seasons,
Mhm.
14 full seasons. His 162 numbers, which is a number I care about a lot. If you pull that deal up, if you look at his 162 average, I think he averaged 162 was 40 homers and
37
140.
homers, 149 RBIs.
Like, give me a break. And he didn't just that was a pace he kept for 14 seasons, playing every day, playing hurt with
Yep.
aches and pains and sick. He had a year he had 185 RBIs. That's not far from the all-time single season record. By
Yep.
the way, he didn't even win the MVP that year in 31, which is nuts. And he hit 340 as a batting average for his career. If somebody did this today in baseball, it would be absolute. His cards would be nuts. And Gehrig is finally getting his due in the hobby world. I think his stuff is finally being appreciated for what it should be appreciated as him literally probably top 5 players of all time,
Mhm.
um, overall. And so I again, his story mattered, the whole connection, the part of Yankees lore, the being an underdog, really, the being the understudied of Ruth, the always in the shadows guy, but never seeking the limelight, never caring about that. He wanted to win and he wanted to play well, and he loved his mom. That was the other, he loved his mom
And his wife,
and his wife. He had a great marriage. I mean,
Eleanor,
it was
is an American hero, honestly.
he was the
Yeah.
absolute polar opposite of Babe Ruth, and
And yet they were
that
friends.
and yet they were friends. And he's
Yeah.
so it just all of those things endeared Gehrig to me. He's from an era that I like. If I could go back and watch, I'd go back and watch the 27 Yankees. Like if I could go back and pick a baseball game, I'd pick some game where the 27 Yankees Murderers Row is playing and watch that team. It full of stars, and Gehrig was the unsung hero of that team for 14 seasons.
So let's start looking at some cards. We're going to start off with mine, which is easy because it's only one. But I decided to put Wally Pip in because I just got this card recently. Just got it slabbed like a week ago, and although it's a one because the right border was not cut very well, it's a nice card. And Wally Pip,
Yeah,
he's the funny thing is, he lost his job to Gehrig, and then he got traded the following season to Cincinnati, where he had a 100 RBI season. So
yeah, he
Wally
was a
Pipp,
good ball player.
decent player. So the story with this guy, this is my only Gehrig card, and obviously it's a one, and it deserves a one. It's creased and rounded corners and everything, but I don't care. It's it's just got the look, and this was always my favorite of the Gehrig Gaudy cards. And this was purchased by a friend of mine in at the Houston show from Ash, who I know you had a nice deal with at Strongsville. So this was a few years ago before Ash was sort of like everybody's favorite vintage dealer, and he was just getting big at that point. And my friend did a big bundle where he got himself a couple of big cards and got me this one at a very nice price. So extremely happy to get it. And then my friend sent it to me, Ben. Sent it to me in one of those eBay authenticated boxes, the
Yeah.
old ones. And so it came and it was, I literally opened it up while I was in my office because I have my cards sent to my office. And I started choking up, because what you said before, Mike, it's like one of those cards that you didn't think you were ever going to own. And I had seen this card many, many times over the years, and now I have it. So getting kind of choked up now, honestly. So, All right, so now we start with the Moynihan Gehrig collection. The
All
big
right.
boy on the left, I know, is a recent acquisition for you. So I wanted to start with that one, and if you could tell the story of how that one came into your possession, I think people would love to hear it.
Yeah, that's obviously well, it may not be obvious. That's a card from the Grail collection. When John Keating called from Philadelphia, the goal of that was to pick up another Gehrig card, which we'll see in a second. Um, but this one happened to come in the deal. We didn't even know it was there really, or really what it was. I'd never seen it, and so I didn't. As much as I like to pretend like I'm an expert, I don't know everything about cards, and that's the great thing about this hobby. You
Yep.
never stop learning, and there's so much to know. You can't know it all, which is good. I like having a challenge and being to pursue as much as I can know. But these cash-in cards, the guy only had two of them, and he had Ruth and Gehrig. And I was originally thinking about not keeping it, and then I'm like, how can I not keep this card?
Yeah, yeah, you had to keep.
How can I not keep it? And so it's in the, it's down in the beast. It's got in its permanent home now. Uh, and what I love is that it's the same picture as the 33 Gaudy.
Yep.
Uh, 33 Gaudy. That card you're seeing there on the right was the first big vintage card I ever bought, and I paid $692 for it, which at the time, given my financial situation, was a mega stretch. I mean, asking for permission from Julie, like, hey, I know this seems crazy, but I want to go. Now it looks like a bargain.
Oh yeah.
Everybody would,
No.
everybody would buy that card for $692 if they could. But that
Yeah.
was at the time a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
That's
that was maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
yeah. You're four times your money now, at least at this point.
Yeah.
You know.
And so I bought that. In fact, we had another one of those in the Grail collection in a PSA. What was it? 3.5, maybe 4? No, PSA 4. I'm sorry, SGC 4. I apologize. In the Grail collection, and I didn't keep it to upgrade because this card meant so much to me because of what it stands for,
Yep.
and kind of that leap forward in my collecting and being able to do those things occasionally, that I'd rather have my two, quite frankly, because it's about the
Yep.
card. I have the card. What do I need a 4? I'd like a 4, but I'm not gonna give up this one, or there's no point. I'd rather spend whatever money I would have in the 4 on a card I don't have at all
That's
than.
I have cards like that where I could upgrade, but I'm like, this card meant something to me at the time, and I'm going to
Yeah,
keep it because it's this example that I want to keep. So
yeah,
Garrick actually has two cards in the 33 set, but it's the same card,
it
which
is.
is odd to me.
Card 92 and card number 160 are
Right.
both Babe Ruth. I mean, not Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. And yeah, I had two of the 160s in the Grail collection too, and I didn't keep either one of them. I don't know. First of all, they were too high. One of them was a 5, and one of them an SGC 5. Maybe that is the only one. I think we only had one of the 160s. We had two of this one. I can't remember honestly, but we did have a 160. It graded a 5, and I'm like, I don't need it that bad because it was too
Yeah.
expensive to keep.
Too
And
expensive to
so,
keep. Yep. Yep.
I'll end up getting that card and the 160 card in a lower grade at some point down the road, but put them paired up together. But the 33, that's classic, right? I
Yep.
love the image. I love that it's the same as the cash-in. I have actually over here, Reindeer Studios, Scott did a charcoal drawing of that 33 Gaudy Gehrig. When he asked me what I wanted, it was no question what card I wanted him to depict in his own artful style. And so these are two great cards. The Gehrig's hard to comp. I would guess it's a $2,000 to $3,000 card, maybe in that condition. Um, but
Yeah, no,
glad.
I think you're under. It's more like it's probably more closer to 3 at this point, maybe even more, because they call some people think this is the rookie card, even though he's got the cash in and he's got a 27 exhibit or a 26 exhibit and a 27. So
Yeah,
there are cards that predate the 33, but the 33 I guess is the real first flagship set that he's in. And so speaking of Gowdy and flagship sets. they in 34 they did give him two different cards.
They did.
Of course, the portrait, which we just showed my one, you've got a two. Beautiful example. And then the number 61, which is the batting, which I don't have. That card, I kind of like the portrait better. I don't know why, but I think it's probably because when I was a kid, I had a Gaudy reprint set, and they only had the portrait in it. It didn't have the batting.
So both of the 34s were in the Grail collection as well.
Oh,
The portrait that you see there is the card from that collection. That was in the absolute I'm keeping pile, and because I didn't have it, the 34 green, I can't remember the grade. It was like a 2.5, maybe 3, something like that. But this is a card. The reason I kept this one is similar to the 33 Gaudy in that I bought this from a friend who had some amazing cards, and it was beat to crap. You can see it's just been through the ringer. But I bought it. I know where I bought it. It meant something to me at the time to buy this card. I graded it myself at the National, and so to get a higher graded version, I just I didn't need that. I have this one and I like this one, you know, ink stain and all or whatever's on there. I just don't care. I just love having the card. So yeah, so now I have both 34s.
and more power to you. Someday I'll get it, but I'm not there yet. So this big boy, uh, you know, I love these cards. It's a great set. It's a small set. You know, I don't think I'm ever going to own it, but you never know. But I know you. This was your number one card in your want list for years. So good for you that you got it. So
Yeah, that was the catalyst. That card was the catalyst for all the Grail collection stuff that happened. The idea was going to be the original moment idea was I want to buy this. How can I just get that card? Period. That was it. Just I want that one. All the rest of it, whatever, you know. And so that was the reason Keating called me in the first place and FaceTimed me with me that night. He's like, the story is I was on my way to a Bible study and he called me. He said, "You have to FaceTime me right now." I said, "Okay." You know, he wouldn't have said that if it wasn't legit. And he showed me this DeLong Gehrig. He's showing me some of the other stuff, and I'm like, "Holy crap! What is going on? You know, where are you at?" I'm at my card shop, and this guy just walks in with all these cards, and so the rest is history. This card is one of those that I should have bought it years ago. Had opportunities to, thought, oh, I'll get it later. You know, no big deal. Um, very, I think people appreciate this card more than they used to, and even this set, right? Some people think it's ugly, and that's fine. Get them in hand, and I promise they're just very creative and cool. And this is a 300 Great Cards card as well by Mike Payne. So it was one of those in that book that I just thought, God, I'll never get that, but it's so cool to see it in this book, you know, and then see it occasionally. It's relatively rare. I wouldn't call it impossible to find by any means, but not cheap either. And this is a card that's only gone up a lot recently, even in post-pandemic world.
I think I watched. You can correct me on this, but I think when I watched one of your early or pre-national videos for the Atlantic City show, and I think I remember this was one of the cards you were shooting for at Atlantic City.
It
Um,
was. And
yeah,
then last year in Chicago, I almost bought one. And last minute, it was expensive, and that was an $8,000 card at the time. And it was a PSA 2. And I called Julie. I'm like, hey, because I had blown my budget pretty much by that time. So, hey, it wasn't that we didn't have the money. It's that, do you want to spend it on this? Right? That's
yeah.
all collectors have these dilemmas, no matter how many zeros are behind it. It doesn't matter. And so that was a call the wife. And she's like, "Hey, do whatever she genuinely meant this. Hey, do whatever you think is right." And at the end of the day, I just couldn't pull the trigger. I just didn't feel comfortable going so much more beyond than what I had planned on spending, because I already feel like I get to my wife's amazingly generous and kind and letting me do what I do. And I feel like I already spend a lot of our money on cards. This was going to be just unnecessary. Like, yes, you want it, but do you want it that bad? And I couldn't answer in the affirmative on that, and so I passed. And it turned out to work out very well. As you,
Yep.
here we are a year later, or not even a year later. Um, Now I have it, and I'll essentially get it for free when it's all
What
said and done.
when I figured that out, because I like a lot of people in the hobby, I do fund a lot of my purchases by buying bulk, lots or whatever, selling off everything, and then getting making a little bit of money or getting a card that I was targeting in that lot for free, essentially. So I thought I was the smartest guy on earth doing that once about 3 or 4 years ago in a big lot of stuff that came in with a 56 Jackie in it, and I ended up selling off the entire lot for a little bit more than I paid for it, except for the Jackie. So I ended up getting the 56 Jackie for free. So
Yeah.
that concept, I think, is good to know. And I don't begrudge other people doing it, but I think that you did sort of the mega version of that here by taking a very large amount of money, putting it into a
Well,
very large collection, and coming out with this card, at the end, and other cards too.
yeah,
Uh,
the plan originally, even just a few months ago, I announced that I was selling a bunch of kind of excess relics and autos of Hall of Fame stuff that I just had, 57 Frank Robinson or Brooks Robinson autographs. Or I'm like, God, I don't need 57 of these or whatever. And so I'm thinking, what if I could turn this box of cards into a DeLong Gehrig and use cards I've already purchased to get me a single, hundreds of cards that are just, I just have them. I love them. It's not that I don't like them. They became unnecessary. And it's like, well, what if I did that? And then this came along with the Grail deal that kind of made that almost irrelevant. And I wasn't going to get there anyway. I've sold a ton of cards, no question, gotten them to great people and
yeah.
everything, but it wasn't moving. It kind of it like everything, it trickled and to a halt essentially.
Well,
And
that's one of the other things about what you did with the Grail collection. That I'm just selling it to friends on Twitter and some of it online, and and just eBay or whatever. But what you did, I think, which is really good, is getting it in the hands of people who should have these cards in their collection.
yeah,
And I was in a chat with Mike from Junk Wax Hero, who apparently just bought a big card from you, which we can't
he
say.
did.
I know what it is, you know what it is, but we're not going to say because we're not going to steal Mike's thunder for his channel. But that was wonderful to hear. And of course, the gentleman who came into Keating's basement to buy the Lou Reed, the Lou Reed.
The
This is
Babe
Lou
Ruth.
Gehrig, Babe
Yeah,
Ruth. It's-
yeah, Joe.
I mean, um, that's priceless. Putting it in the right hands is
Well, I'm glad
wonderful.
I sold Mike the card I did when I did, because I've gotten offers since then much higher than he paid me. So, and no regrets. Honestly,
No,
it's not a big deal. I'd rather him have the card at a lower price than some unknown jabron at a higher price. It wasn't enough to move the needle, and I'd rather him have the card. So I'm glad that worked out.
so now he owes your favor too. So.
He does, but
So we're out of playing days, and I'm a kind of a strict playing days guy, but one of the things that came up while I was creating this slideshow of cards you sent me is that maybe I shouldn't be so strict on non-playing days, because some of these Gary cards that are not playing days are simply terrific. I mean, the swell, what's it called? The swell thrills. So what do they call them? The
swell
swell thrills.
sports thrills. Yeah.
Yeah, they. I've had a couple of these cards over the years, But this one is, I think, probably the most popular in that set because, of course, it's Ruth and Gehrig together.
And the Jackie. This
Yeah.
one and the Jackie.
Right,
Yeah.
and Jackie, right. And then we have, of course, the 61 tops. I love the headline here, Gehrig benched. The reality, of course, is that he had been feeling not so great the end of the previous season. He didn't have a great World Series in 38, but he came into spring training in 39, and he just had nothing. And they didn't know what it was, and he, because of the respect that he had from his team, obviously he got he played for a little bit that season, but ultimately took himself out of the lineup.
Yeah.
Went to was it Joe McCarthy, right? Joe McCarthy, yeah.
Yeah.
And said, I'm taking myself out of the lineup, and he never played another game. So I don't think benched is the right word, but he took himself out. And then, of course, the 62 tops is they gave Babe Ruth an entire subset, which includes this wonderful card. I think this picture is taken on Lou Gehrig Day, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. It was. Yep. I have the green tint version of that 62 as well.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that was taken on Lou Gehrig Day, which was 1939, July 3rd, July 4th, 1939, I think it was.
Yeah, July 4th, 1939, in between two games of a July 4th doubleheader.
Yeah.
All of his old teammates and new teammates, and I was reading about it this week, and it must have been pretty special. And I've seen a lot of these, Yankee celebrations over the years, watching the team. Everybody's had one, but the Gehrig one was really the first one, and his number was retired. The first number retired by the Yankees too.
Guess who was sitting there watching all of that? A very young Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've got that bridge right there of Gehrig was the bridge between Ruth and DiMaggio. He played with both, right?
Yep.
And so that's a big deal in Yankee chronology,
And he played with DiMaggio, really broke out in 36. He played with DiMaggio for some of his best seasons too.
Yeah.
36, 37, 38. Gehrig was a little below, but 36, 37. They're two of the greatest players of all time in that lineup, and of course they won the World Series. But the other thing about this picture is the fact that Babe Ruth is giving him a hug there. We talked about it briefly before that the two of them were completely different human beings who managed to be really good teammates with each other and ultimately good friends.
Yeah, and there were some obvious moments where they weren't very close, but I certainly by the end they would say they were friends for sure.
Well, I think Ruth was sort of in the second half of his career when he was with Gehrig, and that season where Gehrig got the job in 25. Part of the reason the Yankees were so bad that year is because I think that was the year Gehrig was suspended, and his numbers are minimal for him.
Ruth was suspended, you mean?
I'm sorry, Gehrig was never suspended. Ruth was suspended, and for his behavior, and I think he kind of grew up, and maybe Gehrig had a a bit of a positive effect on him, sort of growing up and becoming the type of player he was, from 26 through to the time he left the Yankees. So we got, so these are, the one on the left, I thought originally that was one of the, I think it's 72 Kellogg's has an all-time greats, but no, this is 70 rolled gold pretzels. I'd never seen this before.
Yeah, they're the same card, essentially. You can only tell by the copyright on the back the difference. That's part of it, but 70 rolled gold. I have the 72 Kellogg's. I thought I had sent it to you, but maybe I didn't. They're both, again, the same image, but a great, picture, greatest first baseman. Yep, that still holds true.
Yep.
Ruth has two cards in that set. And so you have the rolled gold came out first in 70, and then Kellogg's re-released this all-time baseball greats set in 1972. So that's why you have two different cards. I have both of them. So,
And then the one on the right is a beautiful card. The red really is striking, and it's a Gem Mint 10.
yeah, I had to
Good
put
work.
in my highest graded Ruth, but in all fairness, it's a playing card, so it's already got rounded corners. It's actually they did Ruth, Gehrig, I can't remember what other players, but they put out these. It's basically a card deck. So each deck had 52 Gehrig cards, 52 Ruth cards, um, and this one happens to be the 7 of Hearts, and they'll distinguish which. For some reason, the Ace of Spades goes for the most, which it seems silly to me. They're all the same.
Yeah.
No one looks at the back, but if I turned it over, it would just be a 7 of Hearts, like a normal playing card deck. And but they're all Ruth, all Gehrig, depending on which set. And so
You'd figure the fours would go for more because he was number 4.
that's a good point. You could say it's serial numbered to his jersey number, right?
Yeah.
But I have just an example of it in my collection. I don't need all 52 of them. That would be a little bit of overkill. So
Unless you wanted to play a game. So these cards,
right.
they came out. The one on the left is the 73 tops with the all-time leaders. Of course, the first card in the set is the Ruth and Aaron and May's all-time leading home run guys. And I collected that card as a kid, as did I the 1976 all-time All-Stars, which is a fantastic set. Same picture, Sporting News. I'm sorry, same color with black and white photos. So that's these are both really nice and high grade too.
Yeah, they're actually the same image. The one on the left, just a more cropped picture
Oh, I didn't
of
notice that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the same image. If you look in the background of the 76, I always think, man, there's plenty of seats for me to go sit there. So when I get my DeLorean and I can go back in time, obviously, I think he's wearing Yankee pinstripes, so it's got to be a
Yeah,
home game.
that is Yankee Stadium. Yep.
Looks like I'll be able to find a place to sit. But these are still vintage cards, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
the idea of, well, you can only get Gehrig cards from the 30s or whatever, and they're expensive. And I'm like, no, there's plenty of other choices, even in the vintage era, where you can get examples of Gehrig and other greats.
Well, he doesn't really have that many cards in playing days cards, really. I mean,
Six. He has 6.
There's a 4-in-1 exhibit in the mid 30s, I think. There's a later exhibit in like 36 with a couple of other teammates.
The 32 US Caramel.
Yeah, right. The Caramel.
That's the one that's now number 1 on my Gehrig hit list, and that's a 5-figure card, pretty much. So
you're just gonna have to hold on to your phone and wait for the next call from Keating.
If it's tonight, I'm going to hang up on you and go call Keating or talk to Keating if he says.
I will not be offended.
But for people to know that there are other cards that you can go find this stuff, these are all the next ones you're going to see. Hopefully these are the ones that you're talking about that may have encouraged you to look beyond just playing day stuff. But
I forget who it was. I'm so bad with channel names. It's a guy who does the channel with his daughter. Oh,
RJ.
Yeah, and he.
Oh no. RJ does it with his son.
Yeah, right. No, the guy that does it with his daughter, and
Scott
she's
Spalding.
a cracker. She's great, and he's of course letting her personality come out, which is wonderful. And I hope they save those videos because I wish I had more videos of my kids at that age. But they're collecting and sending in for grading the entire this set, the all-time stars from '76. And I didn't realize how good of a subset that was until I saw their channel, and I'll try to find it and link it at the bottom when we're done. So we got this is 2007 Upper Deck, 89 reprint. So I guess this was an 89 Upper Deck card originally.
07 Upper Deck, just in the 89.
So that picture is, of course, from Lou Gehrig day.
So It was a
Yeah,
insert.
right.
It is. Yeah.
We see
That's
all the
what gravitated me towards that card.
yeah.
Yeah,
To me, that was one of the things that I was saying. It doesn't have to be playing days for it to really be compelling. And that picture is, of course, it's not just Major League Baseball history. It's American history, world
for
history.
sure.
That that event is forever known and will never be forgotten. And now we
And the
got the two.
fact,
Go ahead.
sorry, and the fact that you have that amazingly iconic American historical moment combined with 89 Upper Deck, which is a classic,
Yeah.
amazing design, revolutionary design, you could say. Uh, that just, what else do you want in a card? It's not valuable at all. That's not the point.
Um, so the one on the right is a 2010 Topps Chrome. I don't know, and it's a Rapper Redemption reference. Is that what that is?
Refractor.
Oh,
Refractor.
refractor. Okay. I don't know much about modern cards, so
That's all right. That's all right.
sorry. But yeah, striking with the colors and that sort of based on an old photograph from Yankee Stadium. Another card that, like I said, is striking for its beauty, really. And then this guy, which of course shows Gehrig fielding. And when I was going through his stats, I saw that his fielding numbers are not great. And they said, he pitched in college, and he was an amazing pitcher, but he didn't really have a position. And when they took him to Hartford, they were like, "All right, son, we want you to be a hitter, so we'll just throw you at first base." And that's where he ended up.
Well, what's funny is I don't know the original image here, but it looks like he's playing third. So you would think this is a reverse negative, like somehow they flipped it, because that's not the angle he would be going towards home plate if he was playing first. And so it's just a quirky thing. And to me, Dan, if I see a newer card with Gehrig on it and it's cheap, I'm gonna pick it up, especially if it's slabbed. I have dozens and dozens of more modern cards where Gehrig, whether they're Allen and Ginters or inserts and top sets or whatever, I have tons of them that people send me, and just because I just got I was in San Francisco and my buddy gave me this one, an 87 Tops reprint.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Gehrig.
You showed that in the.
Yeah, so I
Yep.
love this stuff. I'll pick up all these I can when they're cheap and no big deal. But that one, that Diamond Anniversary 11 Tops, which is known, of course, for Mike Trout's rookie, and
Yep.
that's the Diamond Anniversary version. Just, it's cool.
Yep. The So these two are recent, 22 and 23 Platinum Anniversary. And what does Topps Living mean?
So Topps Living is a set that they started back in 2018. They release certain cards every 2 or 3 cards. They used to release 3 or 4. Now they do 2, I think, a week on the Topps.com website of various players. Done all the cards in the set. This is card number 600. You can
Mm-hmm.
see they're up to 700 and something. And they depict them all in the 53 top set. So the idea of the living set is that it goes on year after year. So it just
Oh, okay.
continues. It's a living set, and every week or every 2 weeks, I can't remember. They've changed it over the years how often they release these cards. Gehrig came out, in 2023, so that's why it's that. The left is a classic image of Gehrig, and it's from 2022 Topps Chrome Platinum Anniversary, and
And
it's the refractor.
it's card number 4.
It is.
So we're almost near the end, but I just wanted to make sure that we kept some of the biggies for the end, and this is a biggie. Do you have a date? Well, of course, it's a certified autograph of George Selkirk, Ben Chapman, Tony Lazzari, Lou Gehrig, and Frank Crosetti. That is some major Yankees there.
Yeah.
Do you have a date on this?
There's no date on it. I forget. I've done the research before to figure out when all those guys were with the Yankees, and it narrows it down to, I think, 27, 28 is my guess. I'd have to go look again and refamiliarize myself with
No,
that.
it's got to be later than that.
Okay.
Barry was on the 2017, but Crissetti didn't break in until like 34, 35. I was thinking
Okay.
36.
Then I
It could be 37.
that tells you I'm totally wrong, and that's okay. But there, you can narrow it down just based on those 6 or 5 players that are
Yep.
listed there.
Because
This is
Lazzari is near the end of his career at the time that Crissetti and Selkirk are at the beginning of their career, so you can probably figure out. I'm thinking 36, 37.
okay. Well, that'll be my homework assignment after we get off to go figure that out.
Oh, I didn't tell you that when I was prepping you about this. There was always a major. I'm going to need it in double spaced, and I'm just kidding.
Got it.
What's funny about these shows, and I've had so many wonderful guests, is that I start collecting stuff that I see on the shows that people are showing me. So I'm bidding in the Sterling auction tonight on a Zach Wheat card after having done the Zach Wheat show, where I was
Love
able
it.
to show 2 cards, and now I'm going to get a third one. So I think I'm probably going to start looking for some of these autos from the Yankees. How'd you get? Yeah, of course. How'd you get this?
Yeah, that was an auction house purchase a long time ago. In fact, I can probably tell you in a minute looking on my, because I try to inventory stuff on my PSA stuff. It was an auction purchase. I want to say it was 3 grandish, which I was, as much as I was excited about getting Gehrig, I was equally excited about getting Lazzari, right?
Yeah,
Because
Hall of Famer.
he died so young,
Yeah,
relatively speaking. So did Gehrig, mind you, but Gehrig signed a lot, and there's just his autograph is way more common than Lazzari,
yeah,
and so it was just one of those lucky Yankee or auction house finds, and thrilled to death to own it.
yeah.
So
It is. It is a fantastic piece. Congratulations on that one.
yeah, I've
I
never sent it in to get you know anything like autographs graded, or I've never really been sought out
Yeah,
a Gehrig by himself, which are
right.
out there all over the place, just because I've loved that one so long. Hold on, what's the? Let me look. What's the cert number? I'm like, I can't find it in my, but it's because I'm not searching right. I'm just going to directly look at the cert number.
I see 83758.
536.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Well, it says I don't own it, so there you go.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
which is not true because it's in the other room. 837-58586. Okay. I put the wrong number. So that would be why I didn't find it. There it is. I paid $3,300 October 27th, 2015. So almost
Wow,
9 years ago. I
wow.
bought that. Legendary Auctions is where I got it. $3,300. I don't know what that piece would go for now, because once I get something in the collection, I don't track really what happens from there, because it's kind of doesn't matter.
I feel
Uh,
like this is a set your price kind of thing because it's so unique. I mean, it really, you talk a one-on-one. It really is a one-on-one.
yeah, I mean, most people. I'm not this way. I love multi-sign pieces. Most people don't. They want the Lou Gehrig by himself on a government postcard or whatever. This adds so much to it. It actually adds to the authenticity of it,
Hmm.
because you wouldn't get all those guys just for giggles, right? Just to add, you wouldn't think to do that. And all the
Yeah,
other ones are totally legit. So
yeah, and they're not. I mean, Lazzari's the only other Hall of Famer, but Corsetti is a huge figure historically. I mean, I think he owns the most World Series rings of any player, and he was also a coach. So he's
right.
got like 20 rings or something. I think he played like 14 seasons and has 9 playing rings and like another 10 from being a coach. some ridiculous number of rings. Selkirk also has a handful of rings. Chapman, if it's, I forget, that's the Chapman. That's not the Chapman who yelled at Jackie Robinson from the dugout.
It is.
Oh,
It
okay.
is. Same
Yeah.
same Ben Chapman. So
Yeah. So maybe not so good on him.
not so great. But this is a piece that speaks to me a lot. It's the reason I haven't pursued a solo Gehrig, because I feel like this one tells a great story, and I absolutely love it. Uh, Gehrig has a great autograph, and I'm just thrilled to have at least one. And it's my only Gehrig, it's my only Lazzari, and they both happen to be on the same piece. So
Yep.
proud to own
Beautiful.
it.
Well, he was a Columbia man, so I'm sure he had some nice handwriting.
For sure.
So this is our last slide, and you mentioned this early on, and I wanted to leave it to the end because um, I'm going to link to the bottom and encourage our viewers to seek this out. I'm familiar with this book. I haven't read it, but I probably should. What about it was the one of the things that spurred you on to collect Gehrig a little more than you had at that point?
Yeah, I touched on it earlier, but
Yep.
when you see, and this was written long after he passed away. It's a biography, not an autobiography, and yet the stories that are told in it about Gehrig are so, he's just the guy's full of character, and
Yeah.
that's something I really admire in people. And he was that way all the time. He wasn't pretentious. He wasn't egomaniac. None of that. He was very humble, and it just talks about his upbringing and going to school in high school and Wrigley Field, and then later dealing with this debilitating disease that would ultimately take his life. That nobody, he was optimistic. He was kept in the dark quite a bit about
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
going on with him. That's all told in here. It's just an amazing, comprehensive look at his life. And it just made me go, I want to collect guys like that.
Yeah.
Those are guys I want to be like, and I want to collect cards of guys like that.
Well, I'm
So
with you on that. I actually, not Gehrig in particular, because I know his story, but there are some other players that the more I learn about them, like Musial, good guys. Musial's married to his wife for 71 years or something. I mean, it's like, good guys who are important historically, but also important to the game, who did things that, who lived lives that you could admire. I don't want Pete Rose up on my display. I mean, he's a great player, but he doesn't do anything for me. And so
and
some of
even
those guys, I don't collect them because they just don't. I'm not compelled by the human being.
yeah, and Mantle was very well liked, but dude, he cheated on his wife. He was, an alcoholic. But late in life, Mantle
Yeah,
finally saw the light and kind of turned his life around. But it was kind of, he'd already done all the damage, both to his body, to his family, right?
yeah. I mean,
So
Mantle is a flawed individual who did have a redemption, but even during his playing days, like he was buddies and supportive of Maris. He was friends to a lot of guys, and he wasn't. I mean, he had his his demons, but he also had some really good qualities as an individual. So and of course the redemption story is great. But
absolutely.
I was collecting Mantle in the '70s and '80s before you know
But
when he was drinking up a storm.
I would tell people, if they haven't read this book, it's
Yeah.
100% worth it, and to check it out.
Well, it says at the top, it's a New York Times bestseller. So.
It is. It's an old book. It's from '07, I think, '09, something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, I will link to the bottom. So that's our slideshow, and that's our show. Mr. Moynihan, I am honored and privileged and very thankful that you took some serious time out to not only show us your collection, but talk about some of the personal things that you've done to get to the position you're in. Obviously, our viewers know who you are. They almost all of them probably subscribe to your channels, multiple channels, and just wanted to really thank you for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. You just want me to talk about cards, I'm there. And to talk about Lou Gehrig. This is really the first Lou Gehrig centric show I've done. I did one on my own channel years and years ago. It's funny, I should go back and watch that because together all these Gehrig cards I'd love to own, and now I find myself
Now
owning
you
quite a
got 'em.
few of them. Be interesting to look back on that, but to get to talk about all this stuff with you, Dan, is fantastic, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we will see you in Cleveland
Yeah, yeah,
for the
absolutely.
National.
Yeah,
As you may know, I'm in the house with a bunch of
all
guys.
the
We have
all the yahoos.
big
Yeah,
tech thing going, and it's been pretty funny. Honestly, there's been a lot of pretty funny stuff going around. Of course, Ray had his Hall of Fame induction video last night, so everybody was talking about that. So it's been nice. So obviously, you're not in the house, but you certainly will be in there in spirit, and we will see you at the show, and of course at the YouTube, creators get together. So
yep,
um,
we're doing that again.
awesome. So viewers, we this will air on Saturday morning. I have the Phil Rizzuto show the following Saturday, and then a couple other cool things happening. I may do a solo show also, but anyway, Mike, again, thanks again. Have a good night, and we'll see you in a little bit, my friend. Take care.